Well, g'day guys and welcome. This is the Life in the Peloton podcast and I am your host, Mitch Stocker, and we're back. Yep, great to be back. I've had a great off season. I hope you had a good off season too, but the road season is kicking off this week with the Tour Down Under, and that means it's time to get the podcast back up and firing. The podcast is proudly being brought to you by our friends and our partner, MAAP. We worked closely together with MAAP all last season. We had a lot of fun exploring some great stories, chatting to some really interesting guests, and I can't wait to continue to grow the podcast with the help of MAAP in 2025 and beyond. MAAP is a really exciting brand right now, born right here in Melbourne, a city with an unhealthy obsession of sport, style, and coffee. And MAAP has expanded all over the world with 6 amazing labs in Berlin, Amsterdam, Hong Kong, Singapore, Seoul, and of course, right here in Melbourne. It's also exciting times here at Life in the Peloton. In 2025 marks 10 years since the birth of the podcast. Can you believe it? 10 years since our very first episode with Luke Durbridge. Time has flown, and I am still loving the ride, and I think you guys are too. Well, it's a big season ahead, so sit back, get ready for it. There's lots of stuff for you guys again this year. We're going to be kicking things off with our OG style podcast first, a Life in the Peloton episode where we explore all the different Pelotons out there and the unique characters in them. We could be unpacking the World Tour Peloton, where it all started for the podcast, or could be your local bunchy, a gravel adventure that I might be on, or some epic mountain bike race, or even just your local running scene. They are all different Pelotons, and that's what I'm loving doing, exploring them all and bringing you all the fascinating stories within them. Well, we're going to still have a few little talking loops sprinkled throughout the year as well for those guests that you just want to hear a little bit more of. That's our little DVDs extras episode, we like to call it, where we ask some quick fire questions just to find out a little bit more about the guests that we love. Our fan favorite is back, the race communique with World Tour Pro, Jaco Alula Pro, Luke Durbridge, and EF Easy Post Sports Director, Tom Southern. We're back, but we're going to be capturing things a little bit differently, audio plus video. And we're going to be packaging them all together to make you a video podcast so you can sit back, watch the reactions, the facial expressions as we laugh and have a go at each other throughout the year as we unpack what is the latest news, what's happening in the races, what's the Pelo chat straight from the World Tour Peloton with these two. So fun. I love recording this episode. But we've got some brand new news, and it is the Life in the Peloton's Race Radio. This is an amazing series that kicked off last year on their own, but now they've made the jump across the gap to join our Peloton. I'm very excited to introduce you Harry Dowdney and Stu Downey, who host the Race Radio, and they've come on board to produce and bring you this series to us here at Life in the Peloton. There's going to be a lot more about that next week, so stay tuned for that. But if you are a subscriber and you want to hear more about that, I recommend you get across and subscribe at the Life in the Peloton website, lifeinthepeloton.com, to hear more about that in our news journal. Last but not least is the Life in the Peloton Chronicles, our members-only podcast featuring special co-host, the mountain man, Swain Tuft, my mate. This is a cracking series. We release 10 times a year exclusively to our Pelo members only, a long format discussion on a wide range of topics. Last year, we chatted about heaps of stuff. We chatted about making it pro, sauna life, unpacking what life is like on a grand tour, retirement, and much, much more. Really, really fun series where Swano and I can just sit back, let loose, and chew the fat. I really, really enjoy recording these episodes, and I know the members love hearing them too. There's lots more on offer for the Pelo members, so make sure you get across and sign up to get your spot in the Pelo before you get left behind and dropped. Well, let's get to this week's episode. I am very, very excited to bring you Lucy Bartholomew. Lucy, if you're not aware of her already, is an absolutely remarkable athlete and human being. At the age of 16, she ticked off her first 100-kilometer ultra-trail run. Yeah, 100-kilometer. You heard me. And she just kept going from there, ticking off harder and bigger challenges along her way. 6 years later, she went across to the godfather of trail runs and finished third in the Western States 100-miler. But it was from here where the road got a little bumpy for her. And then in 2022, breaking out of COVID, she decided to go out on an epic run to sort of, redefine herself, find where she was. And what a better place to do it than the Larapinta Trail in the middle of Australia. She's done an IronMan triathlon, well, a couple, I think, UTMB Mont-Blanc in the same year, but really it's her mentality, her gentle nature, her never say die attitude, and her ability to inspire so many that really just made me want to go and meet her. The best part is she's a Victorian, a Melbourneian. She's just around the corner. So I thought because she loves getting out on the bike, maybe I could take the opportunity to meet up with her and go for a little pedal on one of her easier days, get a brew, and then maybe even go for a cheeky run. A day with Lucy Bartholomew. Well, as I mentioned, and as I'm sure of you are aware, it is a new year. Well, that means for me, new goals. And one of mine is to get back into some training routine again. You're thinking, why? What are you talking about? Well, the last couple of years, things have slipped. I'm not as good as I used to be, and I'm just going out for a run and a ride whenever I get like an hour or 30 minutes free. But sometimes it's not really as fulfilling as it used to be. No purpose. Don't get me wrong, I don't want some coach hounding my ass about getting my data in or anything like that. Those days are well and truly gone. Don't get me wrong there. But sometimes it is nice to have like a little weekly goal that sort of keeps me accountable to something. I've started with the Join Cycling app. It's a cycling training AI, very adaptive, very flexible training program fit for anyone. Like I said, I've just signed up to it. It helped me find my goal to work towards. I set in my availability, the amount of hours I want to do a week, and boom, I had a program that incorporated even running as well. I'm only starting this week, like I said, so go across and sign up too. Come on the ride with me, try it out. As a Life in the Peloton listener, you're going to get 1 month free trial, so no strings attached. You can just bugger it off after a month if you don't like it, but just come on the ride with me. See what happens. Why not give it a whirl? It's really cool. Like today's training was in FTP Builder, 25-minute run with 5 times 2-minute intensive endurance efforts. Easy, a little bit of structure, but not too crazy. Here we go. So go across, check it out, join.cc/LITP to get your 1 month free trial. Test it out. Come on the ride with me. That's join.cc/LITP. Let's do it together. Well, enjoy, guys. We're back. Let's get out there on the road with Lucy.
Oh, it's such a nice day.
It is very nice. Alrighty, let's do it. Well, Lucy, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. What a way to start it.
It's a beautiful way to start. Well, where are we? What are we doing?
We are going up Kinglake, my local hill, for cycling. Super excited. And then we're going to go for a run and a coffee. It's going to be great.
We've got a full day of activity. It's pretty special to be able to do this with you. This area, for me, it's really cool to come back here because it means a lot to me. This is an area that I sort of fell in love with cycling with. Spent all my time training out along these roads through, Nutfield and Arthur's Creek and St Andrews and up Kinglake, of course. My grandparents don't live too far away. Lots of memories coming here, but what's this area mean to you? Like being out here, riding, running?
Yeah, well, I grew up in Doncaster, and when I came out here, I found cycling. I found better mountain trail running. So it's been I feel like it's really opened doors and really allowed me to live in a playground.
Yeah.
Whereas I felt like in Doncaster, it's urban jungle and really hard for me to get motivated, but here it's almost too easy. So yeah, my dad grew up in Rosanna as well. So
there you go. Two Rosanna boys.
Yeah.
Huh, did not know that. Well, what about for you? Because like you said then, what used to be for me, your life's outdoors. It's it's running, it's racing, it's training, whether it's on the bike or running. What about that do you love? You know, what does that mean to you? Because do you do any training indoors? You know, has it always got to be outdoors?
My priority is to move my body.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna endure unsafe or super unpleasant weather and conditions. There's a time and a place for that. But if I could pick my days, this is it.
This is it.
This is it. No wind, sun, but I can appreciate a trainer. I can appreciate a treadmill. I do the gym work. I'm not gonna build my foundations on that. But I feel like change is as good as a holiday with like conditions and stuff. So
Yeah.
I try and get out in it.
For me anyway, it was about that exploration as well. You know, I want to ask you about your training really, is because certain types of athletes, I feel, some who just love that regime of going, I go to that hill, I do my efforts, I come home, I know what I've got, I like to know the hill's that length. And then you got the others who just go, well, I'll do my efforts along the way, I've got to do a loop, I've got to explore. I was a bit more inclined to the second. What about you? What does your training sort of look like? You know, are you, with ultra running, is it going and doing specific efforts? Is it more about letting the terrain provide the intensity, like this hill, you know?
Yeah, I think my training has evolved. I think when I was younger, it was all like curiosity, going away on the weekends with dad and just kind of using what I had.
Yep.
Obviously I was at school. Before school, I'd run my usual block just around the streets. That got me so far in the sport, but the sport's changing.
Okay.
And so now
You have to.
you have to do, people are lactate testing, people are hill repeating, people are taking it seriously.
Yeah, okay.
And not to say that like exploration or like curiosity and adventuring around isn't specific or taking it seriously,
No.
but it's definitely just a different level of commitment and focus that maybe seeps the joy a little bit for me.
Well, what about like what we're doing right now? Because this is something that I love about cycling, is that, you know, we met 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
And we're never going to get this opportunity if we weren't going on a bike, I don't think. That's what I love about cycling, is that you can just ride along next to someone. It doesn't feel too intrusive. You can have a great conversation. It's one of the best parts about cycling, and yet I still love riding on my own. Is chatting to people, is meeting people. What about, I guess, running for you? Is it like that?
Totally. I think sport in general is a really great way to get to know someone, because there's none of that like intimidating eye contact.
Yeah.
And then if you're like hauling up a hill, you don't have to speak. If you're concentrating on a downhill, you can take a minute.
Comfortable
like,
silences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The expectation that comes from like sitting at a dinner table opposite someone is gone.
Yeah.
And I feel much more comfortable with my heart rate a little higher from exercising, focusing on other things, and then just riffing very organically.
Yeah.
And sometimes I come away from like a ride and a run with someone who I just met, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just dumped all my shit on that person.
Totally.
Because it just opens you up.
That's very true.
You're very vulnerable when you're moving like this.
And sometimes I think back at some of my closest training partners, I think, God, they were practically my psychologists out there.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
And like having a bitch sometimes, but sometimes just getting it off your chest.
Yeah.
It's a clean way to do it out
I
here.
feel like you just work through it, both
Yeah.
physically and mentally and emotionally.
So how do you get into trail running? Like you mentioned before, you were running when you were young. I know, I'm assuming you've told this story a million times, but how does a young kid fall into trail running? I don't feel like it's like that. You know, it's not like your cricket or your football. It's a bit different.
Yeah, so obviously at school you do cross country and track, and I was not good at either. I could have run cross country 10 times in a row at the same pace, but I was never the winner of the one race. I played team sports mostly just to be with my friends.
Yep.
But it was my dad, so he was a road marathoner, did Melbourne Marathon, I think 20 times.
20?
Yeah. And then
he must be in one of those, there's not many people who have done.
He's in those like
every
veteran.
edition, yeah.
Yeah, very proudly.
Yeah.
And then as he was slowing down, he was looking for something different to do.
Okay.
And he saw this 100K in the Blue Mountains.
Nice.
In Sydney, and he was like, yes, the answer of me slowing down is to double and a half it. And I saw him train. I'd go with him on some of his runs.
How old were you at this point?
So I was 14.
Right.
And he'd go away on these weekends. I'd take my bike and like ride on the aqueduct path with him.
Yeah, nice.
And I realized he walked a lot and he packed a lot of snacks. And I was like, I reckon I can do this. So I ditched the bike and I joined him for some of his longer ones. And
what sort of distance are we talking?
So Dad took a marathoner's mindset and applied it to the 100K. So he never ran over 30Ks.
Okay.
So we did up to 30.
And I'm assuming now the way you said that, that's not the right mentality for ultras.
It's a very conservative approach.
Okay. Oh, I need to change my mindset then, yeah, okay.
I think for me, I coach my people now and I say, take the time of what you think the race will take you.
Right, not the distance, but the time.
Time. Everything in trail running should be time-based.
Okay.
Because a kilometre of vertical is not a kilometre flat. And so I went up to the Blue Mountains and I saw him compete, and I remember seeing like the elites win the race and look so amazing. Then I saw like people like my dad.
What was amazing about seeing the elites, that they were just sort of completely finished, or they had energy as they came across the line?
They just looked effortless, you know?
Yeah, right.
They looked so happy, so in control. And then I saw the middle of the pack, people like my dad looking a little bit worse for wear, but getting it done. But it was really the back of the pack. They were just all different shapes, ages.
Yeah.
And they were just having the best time. They were like can of Coke in one hand, pile of chips in the other, taking a selfie. And I was like, this is sport. This looks like a 5-year-old's kids party with a bit of hiking. Like,
for 20 hours?
Yeah. Like, bring that on. I can do that.
Oh my God.
And so I went on the train back to Sydney Airport and I emailed every race director of 100Ks and said, I just turned 15. Will any of you let me in?
Right, so there is a limit.
Well, you know, road marathons is 18.
Okay.
And this one race let me in at 16 with rules that I had to run side by side with my dad, get a medical check, the Surf Coast Century.
Right.
Your one.
The one and only that I've done. Half of. But yeah, a great one, and I love their tagline in it, is the feel good ultra. And sorry to interrupt the story, but when you come back onto the coast for the last 10K, it hit me.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, this is awesome.
Forget all the hard moments,
Yeah.
hey?
But yeah, so you got lined up in that. They took a risk, but you knew that training with your dad that, hey, I'm going to get through this.
Yeah. So before I did this race, Dad realized from the race in the Blue Mountains that the 30K run we did should have been longer. So we entered a 50K 3 weeks before.
Okay.
Did that, we were like, okay, if we can do half, we can do double.
What were you feeling at this point? Were you like, wow, this is, like, because when I finished the 50, and it's the only thing I can compare it to, it's pretty broken down. My toes were black. Wasn't really able to walk the next day.
Well, I think what's different is that I was forever running, not to be disrespectful, but at Dad's pace.
Yep.
And so I was always running very
reserved.
And so I'd finish always with confidence.
Okay, nice.
Because I never pushed myself. And I think those, whilst frustrating at the time, it was actually the best thing for my longevity. Because every run I was like, easy, this sport's easy.
Yeah.
You know, I got this, I can go faster.
Yeah, I like this. And you also, I guess, learned about pacing the proper way.
Well, you know, they talk about like in the research and stuff to do all that zone 1 training.
Yep.
And people don't do it now because everyone runs just as hard as they can for as long as they can. And I had that proper foundation built. And so, unknowingly.
Yeah.
Since then, I more sit in the grey zone. But yeah, we did the race together. We spent 12 and a half hours running along the south coast of Victoria. Had the best time. Like, I don't remember any really any low moments. I remember Dad needing Red Bull and chicken noodles at one point. And then they let me...
Chicken noodles?
Yeah, such a combo for the stomach. And then I returned the next year.
So you were hooked? You were already
like,
hooked before that, but this was just like, this is me.
Yeah, I was just like, I said to the race director, okay, I've shown that I can do it, can you let me do it alone? And the next year I went back, ran 4 hours faster, and came second overall. And I was like, then I thought, wow, I think I could be quite good at this.
Right, so this was the, moment of, I think I want to be a runner.
Yeah.
That was it there.
Yeah.
Right.
I knew I wanted running to be part of my life. I didn't know how or if my passion would become my profession.
Right.
That pathway hadn't really yet been made.
And was that just a slow progression, or there was another moment where you went, wow, I can actually turn this into a profession?
I took a gap year and went to Europe, and I saw that there was a niche group of people making it work. And I raced over there, did quite well, signed with Solomon, who's still my sponsor, 12 years on.
Wow. What was that moment like? Like, someone actually wants to sponsor me?
Yeah.
You know, give me money or give me shoes?
Oh, you know, shoes and a high five. And I was like, I've made it.
Yeah, totally.
You know, they offered to pay a flight and I was like, this is unbelievable. Yeah, it was like all the people I looked up into the sport were on that team.
Right.
And to even be in the same room as them, like to smell the same air, I was like, oh.
And then the moments, though, and I can only compare it to pro cycling, is that you absorb so much from that. And without those legend athletes even saying anything, as a young athlete, I can imagine, and you can tell me differently, that you're just sort of watching and just learning by watching.
Totally. I was like a sponge.
Yeah.
I was just eyes, ears, watching, listening, the way they spoke, the way they trained, what they wore, you know?
Yeah.
Like...
that's how you wear it. Oh, right, I've been doing it wrong all this time.
Yeah. You put your left foot in first. Got it.
Well, seeing as we're riding up Kinglake still here, we should talk about the bikes for a little bit.
Yeah.
How did the bikes come involved? Like, I'm not hearing any, well, Dad and I used to ride a little bit, or this or the other. When did bikes get involved?
So, in COVID, like many humans and many athletes, kind of had like a moment of, what am I doing? And do I want to keep doing this? So in 2018, I had what I would consider my breakout year. I won Ultra-Trail Australia, Ultra-Trail Cape Town. I came third at Western States, which is this huge grandfather 100-mile race in America. But I did it all really unhealthy.
Yep.
I lost a lot of weight. I thought lighter was faster. I mean, this story's as old as time.
Yeah. Everyone goes there.
Everyone goes there. And so,
Was this through your own sort of pressures, or there were external pressures, or was it just that what we were talking about before? You're watching and learning and thinking that, well, these athletes are doing it, maybe I should do that.
Element of all.
Okay.
My coach at the time was pretty interested in that side of things, weight.
Yep.
And I put the pressure on myself. I was having success, so it was like perpetual
Yep.
confirmation. And so 2019 was kind of trying to dig myself out of the hole that I'd put myself in. And then COVID hit.
And were you also just tightening the screw even more, thinking that's the way out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. IronMan actually reached out to me and said, you know, at the time they were buying trail races and moving into the space, they were like, oh, would you ever be interested in doing an Ironman?
No idea if you can swim or ride.
No. I used to surf a lot,
Okay.
so I knew I could paddle in the ocean. I'd never cleated in on a bike. And I knew I could run 100 miles, but road marathon didn't interest me as much. I kind of was like, you know what? And it's similar to what we were saying at the beginning of this ride of like, these endurance sports, and Ironman, which is like, for me was like a 10.5-hour day, isn't dissimilar to the ultra running I was doing.
Yeah, right.
And so to do 2 other sports where I just had no pressure or expectations, no one expects me to ride well.
It's just time. You've just got to do the time.
Yeah.
10 hours of exercise.
Yeah.
It's going to
Just
hurt
movement
the same, and mentally it's going to be the
eating.
same challenges.
Totally.
Huh.
You just got to be relentlessly optimistic for 10 hours. Shit'll get bad, believe it'll get better. And then you just got to nibble, sip for those hours, and the body will do it, you know? And so they gave me, at the time Ventum was a sponsor of Ironman, they gave me this wacky looking TT bike, and I was like, I cannot ride that thing.
Yeah.
It looks like a spaceship.
Probably felt like something, a spaceship to ride.
It did no favors to my hip flexors.
Yeah.
I couldn't even run off it. And so I was like, cool, I'll do it, but I'll do it my way. So I got a road bike, learned the ins and outs, just the basics. And then I don't even need to be riding, but I do still, because I just love it.
Yeah.
I love the community. I love where it takes me. I love seeing the same place. Like, I know the trails here, like the back of my hand, but I had, like, the riding feels different.
Yeah.
And so it's just like a new experience of the same place.
Is it a lot of crossover? Like, I was seeing just purely, okay, I know the mentality is going to be somewhat for sure a crossover, but one thing I enjoy about riding for my running, and I say my running, my little running, is that it gives my legs a break.
Yeah.
Still keeps my aerobic system going, yet I can have a recovery day from running, yet I still get fitter.
Yeah. And I think for me, like I was saying about that easy mileage, maybe in running I struggle to do like true easy, but in cycling I lack the skill to push super hard.
Yeah.
Like, just the unfamiliarity of the whole sport.
But I was just thinking then when you said that, is it the expectation again? Because you don't have to go fast and you don't feel bad when you go slow on the bike. Like,
Yeah.
when you run, you're sort of like, I am creeping.
I almost think it's my favorite thing in cycling is when you check Strava after and you're like, yes, top 1,000th, what a win, you know? And in running, I'm like, you know, I should be close to the crown.
Yeah.
And like, you don't want to make it like that's a thing, but it's totally a thing.
It is.
And so I think I'm just in awe of what women, humans can do on a bike. And so then I've like got this whole other community and sport of inspiration to tap into and learn from. You know, cycling is more progressed than trail running.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Have you seen, like, we've seen this big progression in cycling with gravel,
Yes.
and you've felt it yourself. What is the similarities there to the progression in trail running? Because I feel like, everyone's trail running now, but maybe that was the case.
It totally is, yeah. Solomon's actually launching a range called the Gravel Shoe, based off gravel bike riding, of like, we now have a road era, a trail mountain era, and then a gravel of like...
People running dirt roads.
Yeah. And so we're using cycling as our inspiration. And that's what I'm interested in, is like, well, if we're going to take inspiration from another sport, why don't we participate in that sport?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I want. You know, I have a special interest in women getting involved and just being like, I want to ride a bike. I want to go to the dirt. I want to try it. Who cares if you're not good? It's like, it's fun to learn and just be a student again.
And your experience in riding gravel and doing a bit of road and doing, triathlon, which is, on another beast itself, but is there other similarities in like the community and that ease of sort of feeling like, the thing I like about gravel is that roadies can feel like they're being adventurous.
Yep.
And realistically, we know they're not really. But who cares? It doesn't matter. If you feel like you're being crazy and you're out there risking it and adventuring, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Is it sort of the same feeling? And that's what I get from trail running. It takes the pace out of me.
Totally.
I forget about pace. I just run the trail.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And like, you take a road runner to a gravel aqueduct and they're like, and there's a small incline, they'll pause their watch. And it's like, dude, you gotta let that go.
Yeah.
This stuff will make you so strong. You'll be happier. It's a form of training. Maybe it's not the specific pace or terrain, but there's power in that.
Totally.
And I think that's what, like, sometimes athletes forget as they start to hone their craft of one sport and one abscess of that sport. Like, when you say you're a runner, you can run on a track, a road, gravel, the beach, the flat, the mountains. If you're a rider, you can ride mountain, gravel, road, velodrome. No one gives a flying fuck.
And we're seeing it now. These guys breaking the molds. In the pro world, we're seeing the guys like Tom Pidcock and Walt Van Aert. These guys just crossing over and doing mountain biking. But then you've got guys like Lockie Morton who's going, you know what? I'll do like some crazy epic adventure and then still race world tour. So I think it just took some pioneers to sort of break.
Totally. And some brands though to like let people, like when I said to Solomon, I'm going to do triathlon. It was kind of like, and I was like, triathlon is running, guys. It's not different. And they're a market you're going to want. Totally.
It's all like-minded. We were talking about this on just before we started recording, is that the running and the cycling, even though they don't, both markets or, popularities don't know it, but they're breeding the same thing. They're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
Well, we're at the top. Would you believe it? That was the quickest Kinglake mentally I've ever done.
I don't think it was physically.
We're going to rip down now and get a coffee. Well, we're back at the cafe, aren't we?
We are.
Back in Hursty. This is where we were supposed to start, but I sort of wimped out and went, let's drive up the road a little bit, because I was a little bit scared about doing 50k and a trail run or a run in the one day. But the ride was nice. It was nice and cruisy. It's a beautiful day. It's beautiful around Melbourne this time of year. I always love it because there's no one around.
Yeah, this is the best time of year, especially riding out here. It's just super quiet and yeah, it was a beautiful day. So I'm glad that we get to make the most of it.
We're waiting for our coffees. I wanted to ask you, your dad, you mentioned him on the climb, really influential for you to get into the sport, but he's a big driver behind your career, from what I understand. Lots has happened over your career. Tell me a little about your relationship with your dad.
Yeah, Dad's been huge in my whole path of what I've kind of built, and I think I always look back to doing that first 100k where the race had said, you have to run side by side with your dad and overcome some more hurdles to get to the start line, and there was a lot of controversy around me doing it. Being 16 years old and a girl, there was a lot of news and radio and articles and blogs written about it,
Right.
and a lot of it saying that I obviously had an exercise addiction, or I was doing it for bad reasons, and that Dad was a bad dad and that my parents should not let me do it. And so at any point Dad could have said, you know what, Lucy, just wait till you're 18, let's just go by the book. But he was kind of like, I believe in you, I believe in what you're doing and how you're doing it, and yeah, he backed me the whole way, and that hasn't changed from day one.
And he's always just had that, I guess, that eye for you. He was understanding what you were doing. He knew that, I guess, well, maybe, I don't know, there's a question. He knew that by you running with him, you were going super slow. He was plodding along. He had that in his mind. He was always thinking of the longevity. Or was he thinking of the longevity that you might get into running? Or it was just purely that you guys were hanging out together?
Yeah, he was the only person that had the right to make the call, because he saw the ins and outs of what I did. He saw that I'd get up before school and I'd run, and after school at Working Baker's Delight, I'd run again. And he saw that commitment. Joe Blow sitting on a couch writing a blog about why I shouldn't be able to do it had no context to where I'd been, what I've done, and where my head was at. And I think the most important thing is why I was doing it. I wasn't doing it to become someone or to do something, and to be able to scream about it. It was just kind of something we wanted to share, and we never saw the path of it becoming anything. It was just a really big day of doing a passion that we both love and sharing it. And when we crossed the finish line, it was kind of like, awesome, we did it. I went to school that Monday, hobbled around, and no one really cared, honestly. At that age, no one knows what 100Ks is. You don't drive. You've kind of got no concept. So everyone was like, oh, well. It's
too big to even comprehend, isn't
exactly.
it? Exactly.
Yeah. I ran that race blissfully unaware of what that distance meant, and probably that's what helped me a lot, is that it was just kind of a triple digit number and a long day out.
What was the rest of your family thinking? You've got 2 brothers, is that right?
Yeah, I got 2 brothers, and they don't really understand it. They kind of, that marathon distance is for them incomprehensible, especially at that time. And then my mum really is just confused by the whole thing. Yeah, and she's been confused by my dad when they were together and him doing the sport, and so she's just like, how is someone else feeling the same way that my husband did?
Yeah. Well, I am, an offspring. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in there. Well, you spoke about Western States when we were on the climb, and you just touched on it briefly about your own experience there. You had an amazing experience there with your dad as well. I watched the video. It was awesome. It was so sort of, it motivated me, and everything that you said that you loved about when you watched your first ultra and you saw them coming in, everyone on their hands and knees, but coming in and achieving it or not achieving it or just fighting to get there. Everything was in that film when your dad went across to attempt it. Tell me about that, but also about Western States, what this puppy is. This like you, the grandfather, because I'm more commonly, I think everyone probably out there has probably heard of UTMB or may have heard of it, or, that's probably the one that we're all hearing a lot about. It's the World Championships or the World Series or whatever it is, but there's a lot of other old sort of crickety epic ones out there, and Western States is one of them, isn't it?
Yeah, so Western States started off as a horse race, and so one year someone's horse went lame and he decided to try and run it in, leave his horse, and that's how it began. The next year there was 10 people on the start line without horses, and now there's 162 people that get to line up every year. It's a really hard race to get into, and that's kind of the allure of it. Dad, when he got in the other year, had been waiting 10 years to get into it. So the man was 62, so he was 52 when he started trying. And I was lucky that when I got my first attempt at it, it was with... no, you're good. Thank you.
Our copies have just arrived.
Thank you. Legend. Oh,
that's okay.
That's all right. Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you. The croissant is for me, yes.
I got in through a world tour spot, and so I was kind of emailed and I got to jump the queue. So he came across.
Because of your rankings or something like that?
I was just an up-and-coming young Aussie girl that they were looking for people to support that would kind of change of the guards of the sport, I think, just to show that, one, women, two, young people are getting amongst it, and to put me on that start line. I then had, what would be like my breakout race I led the race for 100 kilometres and then finished up third place. And Dad crewed me through that. And then when he got in the other year, we went across as a family, my two brothers and myself, and we all paced and crewed and saw him attempt to complete the race that he'd been wanting to do for upwards of 20 years, but in the lottery for 10.
Do you think you're doing so well there? And even your second attempt, I had a look, I think you were 47th potentially off the top of my head. Still, in the very top half. For a slower edition for you compared to your first attempt, do you think that maybe set a different idea for your dad, thinking like, oh, maybe it's actually not too hard, this thing? Or he knew it was a beast?
I think he knew, and Dad, it's been really amazing to watch Dad and his iterations of him as a runner, and seeing him slow down on the roads and come to trails. And there's a lot of stuff that says as you get older, you get better at running longer. And so we were the same pace, then I was faster than him. I'm obviously younger. And then to see him kind of aging as an athlete, and when Western States fell and he got that entry, he knew that the climax of his aging and the distance and the heat that race kind of throws at you, it was going to be a challenge. But I've never seen someone overnight from receiving an email suddenly start training like a 30-year-old again. And it was just like new life into him. So it was really special to get to see that.
It almost doesn't matter really what happened in the race. Of course, you want to win it, you want to finish at a certain time or whatever you want to do. But what it does to change your outlook on where you are in life. And like you said, he just suddenly got this new lease of life to train. He was motivated. What about crewing? I heard you say that. This is a massive part of it. And I think it gets completely overlooked. So definitely I overlooked it. Crewing, pacing. This is something that, you've got to have a good connection. You've got to have a good crew who are going to motivate you, but they don't want to piss you off. They've got to be right there. They've got to be able to deal with your blowout on the track. Tell me about crewing. Now you've been on both sides. You know what you need to crew you. How was it crewing your dad? Or I'm assuming you've done it at other times as well.
Yeah, all I can say is put me on the start line rather than the sidelines. Crewing is the most exhausting emotionally, mentally, physically. The job is tough. And I think it gets totally underplayed because the runner gets the medal and everyone forgets that it takes a village to do these kind of distances and to do it healthily and well. When Dad crewed me for 2018 Western States, there was an article written that said that he was like Mufasa walking around with his little Simba was running between aid stations to aid stations. It was just that was his first time really crewing me. And so when I was crewing him, you've kind of got to be able to know the person and read the person because they don't know what they need and you know what they need, but they need to trust that you know. And so it's this really fine line. And I paced Dad from 8 p.m. through till 4 a.m. So we ran together, and you've got to tell the person to eat and you got to keep them moving. And when he first entered the checkpoint where I picked him up, he was just on cutoff. And so I was like, all right, we're going to put our foot down and we're going to work really hard so that you can enjoy that last bit to the finish line, because otherwise you're going to be sitting on that fence the whole time and you're not even going to get to soak it up. And so through the night we worked together, and I would just run in front of him and I was like, just look at my feet, put my feet where my feet go, put your feet where my feet go. And every 20 minutes, every 30 minutes, I was like, you got to eat a gel, hand me the wrapper, I want it empty, and it's just kind of having that authority, which, as someone's daughter, you don't get to have that switch of roles that often. So I quite enjoyed it.
Is it hard actually pacing? I'm just seeing you being fresh, him being tired, and you knowing the right pace that's going to keep him at the right speed to keep going, but not drop him straight away and him go, you're going too fast.
Yeah, totally. It's super, super hard, and it's very abnormal to start running at such a slow pace and to walk, especially for me in this where I sit in the sport. It's not like that's my natural standpoint. So he led for the first little bit. I kind of gauged what he was moving at, and then was able to then sit in front and then kind of maintain that 8-minute kilometre that he needed to be doing, and just kind of pick the rises that was like, I reckon he can just like squeeze up this one and we'll recover on the down. The thing I had is that I knew the course really well from doing it 3 times before. It was kind of, I could talk him through it even in the pitch black. I was like, you hear that? That's the river. That's the Rucky Chucky river crossing. That's your next checkpoint. Let's just like listen to that and hear it get louder, because that means we're making progress.
Wow. There's a lot that goes into it. A bit of a shift in direction. A couple of years ago, you went for a FKT on the Larapinta Trail. I feel like it was a shift in direction. Maybe not. I felt like it was, from what I understood, it's always sort of been, you can tell me now, it's been a bit more about racing and doing the ultra events. Why? How did this come about? And should we get into this one? This is a big one.
It's a big one. Larapinta came about, it was a COVID idea. Obviously, we had the 5K radius, the 1 hour of exercise, and so my brain went to, when I can run as far as I want for as long as I want, I will find the longest trail in Australia and I will run in one direction. And so I pulled the team together. We drove from Melbourne to Alice Springs, and
Once COVID was done, there was a little gap. It closed back up afterwards, but it was woefully underprepared, and the film shows that. It was something that I show it at schools sometimes, and I always say, this is not what running should look like. It's not what you should strive for. I put myself in a position that I would not do again. I would do it so differently, but I learned so much out there, and I wouldn't change it for the world, but it was something that was, I bit off a little more than I could chew. So the stats, for anyone wondering, it's 231k and you did in 54 hours and 23 minutes. Most people hike that over 6 days, was it, or longer? 16? 14, sorry.
Yep.
14 days. What would you do differently, like thinking about it now? Why were you so underprepared, and why do you think that you were prepared, obviously, going there?
Yeah, I think if I was to do things differently, the thing about that is I was doing it post-COVID. No one had traversed that trail for 2 years. And usually it's a pretty trodden path. It gets a lot of tourism. And the fact that no one had meant that the grasses were really high. The trail was very hard to navigate. And I just didn't think of that. I didn't think that, the people make the trail. I thought the trail just always existed, and that's just not the case. So that was something that just, no one had not traversed that trail for 2 years ever. Like that was a pretty rare time period for it to be alone. And then we were using a moment in time between COVID lockdowns, and so we were forced to go when the ideal weather was not then. But we thought, we'll make do. And as it ended up, I ran into severe dehydration. I was in very hot temperatures. And also a 2-man team and me as a runner is just not enough people. Like we were saying about crewing and pacing, it's exhausting. And to be on for 54 hours, driving massive hours in the bush to try and find me, it just was too much for everybody. But everyone rose to the occasion, and we came out moderately unscathed.
In that film, and I highly recommend people go and watch it, it's the Solomon film, isn't it?
Yeah, it's called Running Out.
Running Out. One thing I noticed, and why I wanted to talk about is that mentality, and with crew, with yourself, blowouts. I was blowing out all the time when I was riding, So the hill was too long, it was too hot, didn't get the right water, blowing out at everyone. Keeping yourself in check and managing that sort of, that mentality over those long days and riding the ebbs and flows. Like, what's your mentality like out there? I did notice in the film even you could see you were getting pretty heated mentally. What's it like in something like that? A massive challenge, underprepared, losing your way, getting frustrated, then take it to, say, now it seems small, a 20-hour race, and then even smaller again, a 50K, which is 4 hours or less, I guess, for you. Run me through those mentalities and things you've learned and crafted over your years.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that comes to mind is I've learnt that there's only two things you can ever control, and that's your effort and your attitude. And I think once you kind of realize that my attitude towards getting lost or not picking up enough water or going the wrong way or the terrain is wasted, I can choose to be agitated or frustrated or angry or upset, but they're very exhausting emotions. Whereas I can stay relaxed, and then it's the effort of being like, okay, what can I do in this moment? Maybe I should try and eat something. Maybe I should actually take 5 minutes under a tree and just cool down. Like sometimes stopping is faster than moving. And I think that that's what I had to really learn out there is there was just all I had was me, and I was the vessel that was going to get me out of this problem. And my brain was either going to be my biggest asset or my worst enemy. And we went through ebbs and flows. And now it's come out that I can, in other races, I've realised that, you can kind of overcome anything if you can focus on those two things.
And there's those trigger points. Those trigger points, when they are now?
Yeah. And I think my body...
Recognise them, yeah.
Yeah, and I think my body's reset to a level of not wanting to ever put myself in that situation. I think the alarm bells go off a little earlier of like, I'm feeling a little dehydrated. We should sort this out.
Well, back to the bikes, are you inspired now to do something epic on the bike? Aside from, an IronMan, we haven't really even spoken about that, the back-to-back UTMB, back to the IronMan World Championships in Nice. But before we get to that, I love just brushing over something epic like that. Do you want to attempt something crazy like that on the bike and ride into the wilderness and challenge yourself on the bike?
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to do... The confidence that I have in running and the confidence running has given me just means that I can go to something like the Larapinta and put myself in it. And I didn't really feel like anything like the trail would throw at me I couldn't handle. Even though they got pretty funky at times, it was never, to me, it never seemed too uncomprehendable. And I'd love to get to that point with cycling where I feel like, I know how to fix a bike. I know how to navigate bonking on a bike. I know how to feel that lactic and get through it. Those are things that I haven't experienced and I don't know. I barely know how to change a tire, I have so much to learn, and I would love to. And I think it's a really cool way to push myself and go to places and do things, feel that same feeling of the Larapinta without what Larapinta took out of me. And to move it to another sport would be really cool. Is
it going to be off? Would you like it to be off-road, or would you like to be on-road, or you don't care? What's really attracting you on the bike?
I think what I really love is the merging of the different sports, and there's a lot of, in the trail running world, of people like riding to then go running up some cool mountains and using that as like transport between different lines or different traverses. And I kind of love the idea of merging the sports. I don't really care what surface it's on, road, gravel. But yeah, I think it'd be so cool to be able to put my time and effort and energy into doing something like that.
Have you experienced, and we were speaking about the legend himself, Christian Meyer, on our way in to the coffee shop. Are you experiencing some cyclists coming across to the running scene now? I can't say I'm experiencing, or in my world, experiencing trail runners, except for yourself, coming over to cycling. Very many. Is it happening a lot the other way?
I can't say. I can't say that there's many, especially that top end of cycling. I haven't seen them come across. I see a lot of runners using cycling now as a form of training, and they're doing it before they use it because they've got injured, which I love. I think it's really important to build a good relationship with the sport rather than it be the thing that you do when you can't do what you actually like. And so I'm seeing a lot of runners now starting to use the bike as a form of getting that training in without the impact, but not to the level of what Christian. And I think it's not You know, like it's not one or the other. You can do both. I've had a lot of people think that now I'm a triathlete and I'm not a trail runner, or that I'm moving into cycling, and it's like, God forbid I have a hobby outside of this sport and it's another sport, but I'm not a professional.
And you've got to race. You've got to be the best at it.
Yeah.
I think it was a beautiful thing you said before, is that there is no expectation with it. And you can pigeonhole yourself very quickly and start to not hate it. I wouldn't go that far, but suddenly have all these weird expectations around it. Can't it be fun?
Oh, I totally outran my love of running because I thought that I had to be like put in a box with a lid on it. And once I realized that that was everybody else's perception and they can think what they want, but if I can go buy a bike, a surfboard, I can learn to climb, and those are just things that I do. They're not exactly who I am.
Was the Larapinta one of those things that sort of let you refine yourself in running again, even though as hard and as ferocious as it was a different thing, it was a different beast? Was that one of the challenges that allowed you to find the love for it again, or was it doing the try, or what was the thing that brought you back?
Yeah, I would say the Larapinta made me realize that running longer isn't the solution. I think that's what I thought, was like, if I just do more epic stuff, people will think I'm more epic, you know, and that's kind of like more is more. And that's just all I realize is that more hurts more and takes longer to recover and can do more damage.
Okay.
I would say the triathlon and the Ironman was just like a really nice reprieve of like the hours of training and everything was the same. The split was different. And then I realized that I actually could translate that to ultra running and back into the racing scene once it opened up after COVID. And I was a stronger athlete for it because I was fresher, because I hadn't been doing just running. I'd been doing other sports. And it was just kind of like, after doing two sports that feel like they're not my comfort zone, to think of running for a day, I was like, oh, easy. I can do that.
It's lovely.
Yeah.
Your own sport becomes like fun and fresh again.
Yeah, it feels home, you know, it feels comfortable. Yeah.
Well, you've still got your coffee there. We are planning on going for a little trot, so I'll let you finish your coffee and then let's hit the trails.
Yeah, I'm excited. Welcome to my world.
All right, we're off.
Let's do it. So now that we're doing my sport, can I ask you questions and then you have to talk while we go up here?
Let's do it. Yeah, you're right. When we're going up here.
Like, tell me about your life.
Oh, my legs are a bit juicy.
Yeah, I can feel that actually.
Sitting around at the coffee too, I've got coffee shop legs. Do you stop on would you do a coffee stop? Not per se like that, but on a long run, you might go, you know what? I'm actually just gonna stop and have a lunch or whatever.
No.
No.
No, sometimes, desperate times, I'll pull into a service station if I, there's a cool run up Kinglake that you can do. And they have a very good service station. And I'll get like a Coke.
Yeah, nice.
Or a kombucha.
Just put $10 in your shoe.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Oh, ouch.
Yeah.
Well, it's the new year, Lucy. What's the goals this year? What are you thinking? You don't have to give me the full rundown, but in a general vibe, what's the plan this year?
So this year, I'm going to try in February to get back into Western.
Nice.
So I'm running a race called Tarawera, which top 2 male and female get entry into Western. But if not that, then it's back to UTMB.
Yeah. And not both. You can't do both.
I could do both.
It's too much though.
I'm more of a do one, do it well.
Yep.
I think what I end up doing is leaning on, oh, I just did this race, or actually I'm saving myself
Yeah, right.
for this race.
That's a massive problem in cycling too.
Yeah,
I'm gonna just train through this race because I got
yeah,
something else coming, and then in the something coming, you punch her or use the excuse that you were tired from the last race.
Yeah, you just cushion yourself. I think the vulnerability of putting yourself out there and saying, nah, I'm all in on this. This is my one goal is super cool.
Yeah, nice.
And I think I admire that more than like doing the 3-peat or the double.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's just praise one and one done well.
So is Western States and like Mont Blanc, I don't know, can you compare it to like the Tour de France and the Giro? You know, these are the big ones that everyone prepares for every year, and Mont Blanc being the Tour de France because everyone knows about it around the world, but actually the cooler one is, you know, Western States because there's more passion, the history, which is sort of like the Giro and the Tour.
Totally. And I think even the way UTMB, the way that brands, like, you want a team, like you come in mass, whereas Western, due to the limited field, it doesn't get that much exposure.
Yeah.
But
it's hardcore.
It's hardcore.
Yeah.
You know, and like, if you get into Western, you are a captive market for that media. So it's a big deal.
Yep.
UTMB, there's 10,000 people
Yeah, okay.
competing. And so,
What's bigger if you win though? In the running world, not in the exterior world. Where do you get more respect, do you think?
oh, it depends if you're a runner of salt of the earth. I'd say Western States holds more. To the broader community, you'll get more media attention and therefore more fans from UTMB.
Okay.
Even though I think like what it takes to do well at each of those races individually is ridiculous, and then you've now got athletes winning both of those in the same year, so just becoming this athlete that can not only run 100 miles in 14 hours, but they can run 100 miles in 22 in the European Alps.
I know where we are.
Do you? Flat
Yeah.
Rock.
This is a hard road to ride.
Yeah, such a bitch, it really stings.
So back there, we're running down something pretty steep. Noticed, what are the tips running downhill? A friend of mine was telling me, look, you've been cycling all your life. You got a good push sort of running stroke. So run up the hills, but take care of yourself on the downs.
Yep.
The downs, I saw people sprinting down them and I'm sort of cruising down. What's your theory with the ups and downs? Do you walk up stuff as well?
Definitely, yeah. I think there's like a certain point on the downs where braking and looking out for yourself is actually doing yourself more harm, because by braking, you're just spending more time on the ground, you're loading more.
Yep.
So actually leaning forward,
Going fast.
going faster, shorter steps, less ground contact, it will be less impact. So I think that's something that people, there's a theory in ultra running, start slow, get slower. And I think start fast, get slower.
Okay, yeah.
You know, open up a bit. You know, you are going to fatigue, and that's okay. But if you start slow, shifting gears to fast isn't going to happen.
Yeah, not in running.
Nah.
You're not going to have negative splits coming
Very
home.
rare.
You've started way too slow then. You've walked.
Yeah.
So is this sort of commonly what you might do with friends, is go out running like this, or?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, I don't have to run with my friends.
Yeah.
I can also just sit at a cafe,
Yeah.
go for a walk.
Or training partners, I mean, like,
Yeah.
or is it more of an individual thing?
I train a lot alone, mainly because of the hours.
Yeah.
You know, I'm very privileged in that I train later in the day and I train for long. You know, no one really on Wednesday wants to go for 4 hours running.
Yeah.
And the routes that I always choose to get to the fun stuff, you can't really like pull out easily.
Yeah.
Or
You have to
join.
drive there and
Yeah.
yeah. You're a pro. That's what you need to do. It's your job. I love that.
Yeah.
You know, it was difficult explaining that sometimes when I was back here in the summer of Australia. They'd be like, you coming on the 6 a.m. bunch? I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I'm not. I've actually got the whole day to do my training. So I'm going to train in the middle of the day when it's, you know, best suited to me, have a
Yeah.
proper breakfast, good recovery.
Yeah, I want to set myself up for success.
Yeah.
In saying that, like, you know, I've just come off an off period after a big year, and it's been super fun to play in the social element and to kind of be more relaxed about it because I'm not expecting my body to perform. So that's been really, really fun.
How
But-
long did you have off?
I had about 3 weeks.
Nice.
But I was still running, you know, 70 miles, like still running a fair bit, cycling more.
70 miles a week still.
Yeah, when it's the only thing you have to do,
Yeah.
I don't even have a plant to water, you know? It's not hard for me
No.
to get mileage.
I'm thinking about doing a 100 miler this year.
Which one?
I did think about Mont-Blanc, UTMB, Kosciuszko,
Yeah.
UT. But then I thought, do I need to do that? Do I need to do that one, or can I do like the Grampians like you did, or
Yeah.
other good fun ones out there? I just don't know the scene. Of course I know about that one because it's big,
Yep.
but is that the right angle? What are
Well-
the best ones to choose?
It depends what you're after. Like UTA or UTMB or
Whatever.
Ultra-Trail Kosciuszko, run by IronMan, you know you're going to be well looked after. It's going to be well marked as a course. Lots of food, lots of volunteers. When you enter a race like Grampians, it's a home style organic race.
Right, okay.
Expect,
Don't want that to be your first, maybe.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Do you think I should think about trying to tick off the Buffalo Stampede earlier this year to
The
try and get 100 in?
100K?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just to see if I can
If you need a crew,
get my
man.
heads around 100.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find a harder 100K.
Okay.
No, so I'm saying if you did Kosciuszko 100 miles, I think you'd find that easier.
All right. So maybe it's a step too high.
I think with your brain and experience in sport, it's not.
Right. About overcoming the mental battles out there. It's going to hurt.
Yeah,
in
you
both
know all
events.
that shit.
Yeah.
That's not going to be new to you. It's just going to be, like we say, that commitment to the hours of being relentlessly committed to left foot, right foot. That's all you got to do. Like, it's really not that hard. It's just long.
Lastly, Lucy, before we turn this off and really get into it, 5 years, 10 years. Have you thought about that? Where you might be? What you might be doing?
Oh,
It's a big one. I don't
So-
have any idea what I'm doing, so
I'll be 33 in 5. And, hopefully the same dumb shit.
if you're like me, I'm 38, so
Yeah,
be interviewing
God, if I
someone
could be anything like that, I'd be stoked. Nah, just continue, like, I love storytelling. I don't necessarily need to tell my story, but I love that the people in sport that I've met. And so making films or clips and connecting with people is like, I think when the racing starts to fade, that'll be my priority.
How good was that? Starting the year with that. A day with Lucy Bartholomew. She's great. I love being out there with her. Going on a ride, having a brew. She was so fun. Yet it was still a pretty hard day. I'm not gonna lie there, because it was her rest day, and I was happy that run was only just shy of 10Ks because I'd had enough. I'd had quite enough. She was really fun. So watch out for her. If you weren't aware of her, watch her, follow her. She's really inspiring, and that's the way I wanted to start this year. Going out with a day with Lucy to inspire you, to inspire myself to get out there and challenge yourself. That's what it's all about. Great to be back on the pod. Love being back. It doesn't happen without our major partner, MAAP, Red Bricks Media, who put this podcast together. And of course, without you guys listening, I want to hear more from you guys this year. So make sure you get across and subscribe to Life in the Peloton to get those news journals. We're going to be putting them out a couple of times a month to keep you up to date with what's going on in Life in the Peloton. Lots and lots going on this year. I've covered a bit in the pod, so hang in. Next week, we've got the race communique, the video pod. That's going to be a lot of fun. We're here at Tour Down Under, so as I said, there's lots going on, and I'm very excited to be back. So guys, until next week, take it easy. I'll speak to you then. That iconic music in this episode was composed by none other than the legend, Pete Shelley. Cheers, mate.